Be a deserter because the man didn't want to go to war and was chained to the other end by his teammates and nailed to the rock, leaving him with a rifle, a few bullets and food, leaving Paul to fend for himself. Before they left, the team warned Paul not to sneak up from behind or they would kill him and feed him to the wolves. As soon as they left, Paul started assembling the rifle and loading the bullets, but it was too late, as his teammates had already disappeared into the thick jungle. If he wanted to live, he had to get out of here as soon as possible, so he fired a cool shot into the chain. The impact of the shot was so intense that Paul was in pain, but the bullet was still unable to break the hard chains. He began to rummage through the remaining supplies and found his glasses. He thought of a good idea, so he unscrewed the screws with a utility knife and took off the 800-degree lenses, snapped off a pine branch, chewed it in his mouth, and then rubbed it between the cracks of the lenses. After the lenses were completely dry, he inserted an 18-centimeter hollow tree branch and drank a mouthful of water and slowly poured it into the lenses, and thus a wilderness version of the magnifying glass was completed. Then it was time for knowledge to make a difference. Focusing the magnifying glass on the sunlight, the dried broccoli was set on fire, and when it was almost burning, the water was quickly poured onto the hot rock. The huge difference in temperature caused the rock's surface to crack instantly, but the chain didn't crack at all. Paul was baffled, so he patiently continued to repeat the action and burned the rock little by little. Luckily, after a few days of hard work, the exposed nails became longer and longer, which strengthened Paul's hope of survival. Unfortunately, the hay around him was soon pulled up and the water was exhausted. It was all or nothing. He threw down the last straw and quickly grabbed a tool and pried at the rock, desperate to get the nail out. But even with all his strength, the nail was still firmly embedded in the rock. So Paul opened a bottle of canned food and ate it while cursing his teacher for being unreliable. Then he remembered that he still had a few spare bullets, so he quickly pulled out the bullets one by one and then poured all the gunpowder he had, collected into it and pressed it tightly with a stone in preparation for the final battle. Paul wrapped his head and waited patiently. With a violent explosion, he couldn't wait to go forward to check but found that the ammunition was not powerful enough and did not explode the chain. Then he picked up a stone and hammered it left and right, hammer after hammer, a desire to live, hammer after hammer, a rebellion against the world. In the forests of northern Europe, under the uninhabited sky, in the autumn breeze, he tried his best to survive. He hammered from day to night, and finally managed to pull the nail out. And after all, it was a miracle of strength. He shouted to the sky in excitement and thanked God, but the shackles of freedom were still on his feet, and until they were removed, he would always be a prisoner and a deserter. With his rifle on his back, he searched aimlessly and soon found a farmhouse in the valley, and through the scope he saw a woman who happened to spot him. Translated with Deep L. Com, free version.